viewers, thank you for joining us. You're watching OBN Horn of Africa. In this edition today, we're going to discuss about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, political affairs, and I joined by Ugandan senior journalist Kungu Al-Mahadi Adam, mostly analyzing and giving critics on African affairs. Kungu, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, my brother, and I'm very humbled to join you on OBN. In Uganda, we always follow you, watch you, and you're doing a very amazing job, my brother.
Appreciated. Okay, before directly going to my questions, I need you to tell us a bit about your bio, everything.
Thank you. Well, like you said, rightly so. My name is Kungu Al-Mahadi Adam. I'm a Ugandan journalist. I work with Baba Television, which is based in Kampala, which is the country's capital. I host political talk shows on Baba TV, and I am the spokesperson of that TV. You can say the head public and corporate affairs. I also work with Radio 4, also based in Kampala, and I still host political talk shows there. I am also the managing editor of Plus News Uganda, which is a local online publication. I describe myself as a journalist that is very, very much passionate about matters Horn of Africa, but of course, someone who is very, very interested in covering topical issues on the continent.
Okay, among the very pressing issues of Horn of Africa, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam will take the top list. And what's your knowledge about this project? And you've been heard commenting, giving critics insight, on the justifiable right of Ethiopia regarding this grand project.
Thank you, my brother. First, it's always an opportunity, a very humble opportunity to speak to my brothers and sisters of Ethiopia. Personally, I consider Ethiopia as the mother of this continent. And so we know its contribution to the liberation of the rest of countries on this continent. And so that makes it a very special country for me in Africa. And so whatever happens in Ethiopia, whatever goes on there should be a concern of every African. You know, whatever happened to your mom must be a concern of yourself, or must be a concern to your brother. And so I have critically followed issues that happen in Ethiopia. I've come to Ethiopia myself quite a number of times, not just for leisure. For example, I've extensively talked about and covered what happened in the north, the recent war in the north, and we're very, very much grateful that at least this conflict has taken a positive side. And I want to thank the government of Ethiopia for always, from the beginning, having been there with open hands to fix the situation in the north. And so, in the same spirit, I got interested in understanding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And so I have been able to, read more about it, talk more about it, and also visit it. Last year, I visited GERD myself. I went to the dam. I've done a lot of research. I've interviewed so many people about this dam. So you ask, to be very precise to your question, what do I know about this dam? I know that this is a project that is going to answer or to help so many dreams of the people of Ethiopia, the people in the Nile region, and also the people in Africa to achieve those dreams, those anticipated dreams, the dreams of, providing or responding to the need for electricity in their respective countries, but also to help in reducing the high levels of unemployment in not only Ethiopia, but also in the region, but also to help Sudan itself to reduce on the floods that have been, affecting them for a very long time. And so, to be very precise, this is an African project that will not only benefit the people of Ethiopia, but the region and Africa as a whole.
Africa is endowed with, very precious natural resources, but the continent is not at ease politically, economically, and healthcare system, educationally, in all sorts. And what ought to be done to have the potential that favors Africa on the podium?
Well, my brother, you are very right. Africa is hugely endowed with not only natural resources, but also human resources. And so how best we use these resources should be the issue now. We are actually lagging behind. The other day, I was reading a report by the United Nations. Our African countries contribute to the highest number of the least developed countries in the world, despite the fact that we seem to be, or we are actually more endowed in terms of natural resources compared to some continents in the world. Now, we are lagging behind as a continent because of so many factors. And today, for this sake, I'll delve into basically one or two. One being the fact that we have not been able to utilize the huge abundant resources we have. And I'm very pleased that a country like Ethiopia has been able to realize that it can use its own resources to stimulate socio-economic development of its people. A case in point is the desire to utilize River Abe, which is we refer to here as Blue Nile. For example, when you look at Ethiopia, it is sourced to about 85% of the Nile waters. Now, for a long time, Ethiopia has not been able to tap into the potential of this resource. It is actually the reason why about 65% of the Ethiopians do not have electricity. And so Ethiopia has set the ball rolling. It has posed the challenge to the rest of the African countries to do what we call soul searching, to look into the potential around them, just the way they did. That the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam kickstarted in 2011, basically with the resources got from, first of all, government of Ethiopia, but also the nationals of this country, both living within Ethiopia and those living out of the country. So what has been happening in most of the African countries, one, we have not been able to utilize our resources, and the reason we've been giving is perhaps we don't have enough resources to make use, we don't have enough funds to make use of these resources. Now, Ethiopia has challenged us, has challenged the rest of the countries. We have the gold, we have the human resource, we have the rest of the minerals, but we are not able to use these minerals to spur, to stimulate the socio-economic development of our people. So we are lagging behind, first of all, because of the failure to utilize the resources we have, but also you can now bring in the other factors. You can talk about, the political instability in different parts of the continent. You can talk about, sometimes poor leadership in some parts of the continent. But basically, fundamentally to me, is the failure to use the resources we have, which Ethiopia is now challenging the continent, that you don't need to rely on foreign aid. You don't need to wait for, the West, the US, to depend on their own, or on their aid. For you to use what you have to help your countries grow, which is a very great thing.
Okay, Kungu, about 85+% of the river Nile originates from the highlands of Ethiopia. And the development of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is, showcasing, developing or utilizing one's own resources. Ethiopia is developing this grand project without hurting the lower riparian countries. You understand? To this, in contrary, Egypt preferred to stay and stick on historical injustice and failed to leak the bitter reality. And what is expected from various presses, different journalists like you, to promote and to tell this reality to the global community?
I want to tell you that I'm very saddened as an African, but more importantly, as a national of one of the countries that are part of the, as a journalist who is part of one of the riparian countries of the Nile. We have 11 countries that fall in this region, in the Nile region. The cause of my being sad is the fact that apart from Ethiopia, the rest of the countries in this region, the rest of the riparian countries are quiet about the monopoly that Egypt wants to create on the utilization of River Nile. Egypt does not own the Nile. It's a resource that every riparian country has a right to use in order to help nationals of those respective countries.
Yes, based on fair and equitable share, right?
Yes, but again, let me just make this point, my brother. So Ethiopia has, first of all, when you look at whatever Egypt is pushing, Egypt gives 2 or 3 reasons, some of which are not even justifiable, into trying to out the River Nile to start this project. And if it succeeds in scaring away Ethiopia, it means the rest of the riparian countries will equally have no choice. They will have to equally chicken out. Now, Ethiopia has started this. It's saying that historical injustice, the historical agreements, one the other of 19, that one gave veto powers to Egypt over the utilization of the Nile, but also the other one that gave it a 66% use of the Nile flow, which Ethiopia was not party to, Uganda was not party to, and the rest of the riparian countries. So, for a long time, we have desired to see a country coming out, one of these riparian countries, to tell Egypt that, please, we have a right under so many international laws and the principle of equitable and fair utilization of common resources, common water resources. And here is Ethiopia. Ethiopia has stood. What I expected was the rest of the countries to put their back behind Ethiopia and say, please, Egypt, you cannot think that you can monopolize the use of the Nile waters. The rest of the countries have the right to using it. It's not just Ethiopia. The historical injustice shouldn't be given chance. My brother, a lot has changed. What was there in 1929 is not what was there in 1959, is not what is there today. Today, every country is looking around to use whatever they have to develop their. So you can't keep invoking historical agreements and bar the rest of the countries to use what they have.
Okay, apart from that colonial agreement that you referred now, in 2015, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia agreed on the principle of, on declaration of principles. In that agreement, these three countries agreed on the promotion of this Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Out of the blue, Sudan and Egypt gave a cold shoulder, and mostly Egypt stabbed Ethiopia at the back. What's your comment on this declaration of principles and the stand of Egypt after agreeing on the principle?
First of all, Egypt for some time now has been falsely claiming that Ethiopia is unilaterally doing, the constructing filling of the dam, meaning the false narrative has been no, talks, no engagement, no agreement, no discussions have been made between the three countries in question, that is Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. Now, that's a lie. And I think as journalists, we have not done enough. Journalists both within Ethiopia and the continent as a whole. One of our principles as journalists is one of the things that guide us is truth. And so for some time now, for some years, we have not been able to bring out the fact that in 2015, like you said, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan agreed. They signed a DOP, Declaration of Principles, in which Egypt acknowledged and allowed the continuation of the construction of this dam alongside the negotiations. And so you cannot come out and lie to the entire world that Ethiopia has been doing this unilaterally without, engaging other countries, because they sat in 2015 and agreed. They agreed to allow the construction to start parallel to the talks and negotiations. So it's not true that claim of the unilateral filling and construction of the dam. That's a lie that we ought to have brought out as journalists. And I don't know much about Ethiopian media, but as a professional in this field, I think journalists in Ethiopia have not done enough to bring out or to counter this false narrative by Egypt. This should have been amplified and made it clear that there was an agreement between the three countries to allow the construction to start as negotiations proceed.
In your recent tweet, you have also criticized Egypt of taking the case to the Arab League. Would you, recite that again?
Yes. You clearly know the Union is ably handling negotiations. First of all, even for going there, my brother, what I can assure you now is that anything to do with the dam now is irreversible, because if we are talking about nearly 100%, because we are talking about 95% of the dam complete. So any talk, any discussion that is in line with interfering with the filling and construction of GERD, it is just background noise. Deceive you or can deceive anyone. Don't actually to excitedly waiting for the fourth filling, maybe next month or in August. But again, before I get to your question, the other false narrative that Egypt has purported for a long time is that the construction and filling of it is not true that the construction of this dam is going to cause a threat. For example, we have witnessed the first filling of the dam, second filling, and the third filling. We have not seen, neither have we heard of any danger caused by this filling. So next month or a month after, next month or July, or rather August, we expect to see the fourth filling of this dam. And I'm very sure, just like it was for the consecutive previous three fillings, still there'll be nothing to worry about. And so there's no threat, at least given what we have seen. Number two, we have also seen experts before, when the construction was going to begin, a lot of research was done, and I am reliably aware that companies that are doing the construction of this dam have experience spanning so many years. They've been constructing dams on so many rivers in different countries in the world. And so they can't go in for a project that risks any other country. Now, coming to what you're saying, I was dismayed again when I saw Egypt doing everything possible to, first of all, internationalize this issue by running to the UN, by running to the Arab League, but also by claiming that this is a security threat. Now, these are scapegoats because, for example, the African Union been ably handling this matter just to iron out a few issues that could arise, which is very okay because this is an African project entirely in Africa involving African countries. So the first, group to run to for any issues that could arise is African Union. And we're actually moving in the right direction by engaging the continental body, which is African Union, and has been proceeding very well. So there is no need for Egypt to run to the Arab League, to run to the UN, yet negotiations led by the African Union are still ongoing. Now, this is what I saw. First, I saw Egypt running to the foreign ministers of the Arab League before going, that was in March, before just last month, running to the Arab League summit. But now look at what's happened. The Arab League said two things that were fundamental and very provocative. One, they resolved that Ethiopia should stop what again they called unilateral filling of this dam, which is absolutely disturbing because what is it that they call unilateral filling of the dam? Because, like I've said, the DOP is there, that Egypt is party to. Number two, it is very sad that the Arab League is doing two sinister things. One, it is trying to act like spokespersons of Egypt. The other thing it is doing that is ugly, it is trying to jeopardize, it is trying to destroy the long-term relations we, as Africans, have been having with our brothers, the Arabs. Now, I don't recall any day when any African country has ever told Syria, has ever told Lebanon, or any other Arab country on how to develop their people. We are talking about 120 million Ethiopians that have been collecting money to have this project become a reality. And now look at this. Arabs are sitting in Jeddah, which Jeddah has no any geographical connection with Africa, which has no any attachment on the Nile. And now they are deciding that you Africans, because we are talking about 120 million Ethiopians, this is not about the Abiy administration. It's about the people of Ethiopia. It's about the people of Africa. Now, Arabs are sitting in Jeddah and they are dictating on how Africans should develop themselves. How weird. So it was not proper for the Arab League. It was a very grave mistake, a huge mistake that, in my view, shouldn't happen again. In this question, Ethiopia is the key because, like we said in the beginning of this interview, that it's a source to 85% of the Nile waters. But this Ethiopia is not part of the Arab League. So how do you sit and discuss Ethiopia without having Ethiopia itself in this engagement? Because there is no any connection between Ethiopia and the Arab League. So what we expected was for the Arab League not to attempt to interfere in the internal affairs of this continent because it risks jeopardizing the long-term relations we've been having with our brothers, the Arabs.
Funny enough, Egypt still sticks to this colonial agreement and unjustifiable historical narratives of the Nile waters. Do you think Egypt has any sound justification and sound argument about the violation of the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization of transboundary water by Ethiopia in developing this project, let alone the very known unjustifiable reason and this historical and colonial agreement? Is there any that violated from Ethiopian side in dealing with this project?
Absolutely not. You know, if it was there, what we have been demanding from Egypt and what we continue to demand from Egypt is to come out with an agreement, whether a continental agreement or any other international agreement that bars Ethiopia or any other riparian country from utilizing the Nile waters. In fact, the international law allows Ethiopia to utilize this project under the principle of equitable and fair utilization of this water body, because every country, like we said, that has or that falls in the transboundary resources are guided by this principle. And so there is no any justification in the claims Egypt is making because it has not presented any treaty that it went through.
I mean, your country, Uganda, is one of the low riparian countries dealing with this Nile River waters. And what is the sentiment of Ugandan citizens in this grand project, in the development of this grand project? Are they complaining about it like Egyptians?
Uganda, we are not, you know, people here in Uganda have started paying a lot of attention on what seems to be a disagreement between Egypt and Ethiopia. So I was saying that in Uganda, generally, it is a different story because people have started giving a lot of attention on this, on what seems to be a disagreement on GERD between Egypt and Ethiopia after some of us coming out to write about it, to speak about it on our TV and radio shows. But otherwise, everything seemed normal. And it is the reason why, when I was starting this interview, I said, it's sad that the rest of the riparian countries are quiet about this, I call it bulldozing. Ethiopia, rather Egypt is trying to threaten every other country against using the Nile, and we are all quiet. So the risk is time is going to come, because now you see we have left Ethiopia to fight alone against this injustice. Why? Because Ethiopia has found it okay for them to start the projects now. But time is going to come when Uganda wants also to construct a similar project. And trust me, Egypt will rise. Time is going to come when any other riparian country wants to start a related project like GERD, and Egypt will still rise. So it would have been very important for us as countries in the Nile Valley to stand now, join Ethiopia in not just, fighting Egypt, but to remind them that, look, our friends, you were party to the DOP. You assented to the start of the construction and filling. Number two, we ought to stand and that, please, utilize this Nile. Kenya has to do the same. DR Congo has to do the same. Maybe any other country in the Nile Valley also wants to use it. So we need to stand and alert Egypt about that fact.
Okay. Kungu Al-Mahadi Adam, Ugandan journalist, thank you for making time to give us this valuable interview. We really appreciate you. Keep commenting, give analysis, critical analysis. Thank you one more time.
You're welcome, my brother. It has been a pleasure for me to talk to OBN Ethiopia. We always follow you in Uganda. We watch you. And like I said in the beginning, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Appreciated. Dear viewers, this brings you to the end of our edition for today. See you next time with another edition. Bye-bye. Take care. Have a good one.